Hey, good to see you. Thanks for coming. This is another episode of Wireframe brought to you by Design Systems House. I'm your host, Donnie D'Amato, and today we're going to be talking about system color. But before we get started, a couple of things. First off, last week I had Mike here in the studio for a interview of sorts, and which was really exciting to have him here in the interview, in person. However, his mic didn't work. So yes, Mike's mic did not work at that point, or actually it's my mic. Whatever. So the audio was definitely off in that one. Don't worry, we will get Mike back in the studio with a working mic next time for sure. So I apologize for that. But actually, this weekend I took a lot of time with some help to get my mic situated. So I'm checking it out right now. It looks like everything seems like it's working, right? Looks like I have audio levels. Yeah. So you should be able to hear me, and hopefully it sounds a lot better than it did before. So yeah, let me know, and of course I'm gonna listen to it after the show as well. But anyway, a couple of other things. I think I already talked about my book, but I'm waiting for my book to give me the hard copy, the physical copy, for me to review before I end up creating a link for people to start purchasing and all that kind of stuff. So we are really close to the tail end of that thing. Really looking forward to that. That kind of stuff. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's important that's been going on with me. Not in particular. I've been pretty much heads down trying to do the book stuff and then also work on Undefined. Also, Gong Hei Fa Choi, it is New Year, Lunar New Year or Chinese New Year. Right now, today, we celebrate in this house. That's why I'm wearing the red. There's lots of back and forth about if we should be wearing red or not. I'm not an expert. I'm just being told that I need to wear this. That's what I'm doing. So anyway, for all those who celebrate, best of luck and best wishes to all of you. But let's get into today's topic, which is system color. Now, in Mise-en mode, in the book, and as well as a lot of the work that I do on a regular basis when it comes to design tokens and trying to figure out values, I believe that I am not good, actually, at figuring out the values for design tokens. I don't want to have that as part of my repertoire, so to speak. I mean, I'm already color deficient, so I'm not a good person in terms of choosing color. But what I think would be a lot better is if the user chose some of these colors for us, and we have ways of that happening. This goes back all the way to things like Windows 95, something that I grew up with, where you could change all of the colors of the UI. You could make it look like hot dog stand and just like red and yellow everywhere. Some really interesting stuff, maybe some wild stuff. OSs have since pared that down a whole bunch to only give a little bit of insight into the colors that you could choose. We're actually going to go over that a little bit, but I want to raise these things, this thing called system color, because we could actually use this stuff in curating our tokens, and I think it's a very powerful thing that we can do. But first, let's ask AI some things about system color. Let's see what AI knows about system color, if it works again today, because we're doing it live. We're going to figure it out. All right, here we go. Oh, wait. I gotta do a little refresh here. Let's see if this works. Okay, we'll try again. Hey, I was wondering if you knew anything about browser system color and what that is and how that could potentially be used in a website.
Browser system color is a CSS property that determines the color of scroll bars, select boxes, and similar widgets of an operating system, as well as links with hover focus states. It is useful for making websites consistent with the system on which the browser is running on, for making websites look natural and integrated in the browser environment they are used.
Okay, super cool. And is that accessible to websites? Like, can I use the system color keywords? And how would I potentially use them in my website? Because you talked about, the OS settings, but how could I potentially use that stuff in my browser, like in my CSS? How would that work?
Yes, you can use the system colors in your website. To use system colors in your CSS, you can use the body pseudo element along with CSS color properties, such as body background color system.
Okay. That's very wrong. I think I think the AI is a little confused. So I'm going to explain a little bit more about system color, and in order to do that, we're going to go over to the computer here, and I'm going to show you some things that you need to know. So the first thing is, let's bring up the computer so that you can see what I'm talking about. This should be that there. Fantastic. And then what the hell? Let's bring me. I think I'm here. Is that right? No, maybe not. Am I here? Oh, I'm here. There he goes. Okay, very good. All right, so system color. This is on MDN, which is the Mozilla Developer Network website. And if you search for system color, this is what you'll find. So you're going to find this page called system color. And then it talks about what system color is. It says, it reflects the default choices used for different parts of the web page. But the important things that I really want you to see is down here. So all of this stuff here on the left-hand side are system color keywords. Okay, so you have things like accent color and canvas and field. You see some samples of that stuff over here. Okay, and there's a whole bunch of them. And if anyone out there is familiar with the way that I consider intents, these are really close to the ways that I consider intents. There isn't enough of them really to do it, I think, properly. I really wish that this would be extended to actually do it by intention, but this is really close. So there's a whole bunch of these, and then there's deprecated ones that are down here that you're not supposed to use, but maybe you could use them. I don't know if you really want to. And it has actually the thing that it's deprecated, or you're supposed to use instead of the deprecated one over here on the right. All right. And then there's samples of this stuff over here. So you can see, like, for instance, Canvas has this white background and Canvas text has this black background. And if we force the colors on here, let's see if I can get that to work. I need to do rendering. And then I'm going to go to prefers color scheme. Let's see what happens here. Okay. Yeah. So you can see here, Canvas, that's over here, changed from white to black because now we're forcing the OS of dark mode. So I'm automatically getting a light and a dark just by using this keyword called canvas, right? So that's the thing that I think is really interesting about this is that you have this stuff that's embedded in the browser that can give you what the user wants, either light and dark, and it can go further than that. And I say that because that it can go further than that because it's actually up here where you see accent color and accent color text. That's something that I like isn't really being used right now, and I want it to be used because this is supposed to represent like the color of the checkbox and the color of the slider and even progress bars and things like that. That's supposed to be what that color is, but you'll see that it's not really actually being shown here at all. And that's because the folks that are working on this specification and things close to it are worried about something called fingerprinting. And fingerprinting is basically saying, I can identify this user by this amount of data. So basically, the accent color is very much based on your OS's color. You could actually set in the OS what the accent color is supposed to be. So you could set it's like, for me, I like to set like a nice hot pink for it. And then UI elements will be hot pink. But if I set that, that's personal to me. And then if someone's able to read that value, then they would be able to identify my system over and over and over again because of that value. So they're very worried about that being a metric for people to find, who this is, for targeted ads at its, the least worst, and then malicious activity for even worse than that. So as much as I really would like this kind of thing and more of it that really kind of amplifies the personalization, there's also this problem of fingerprinting that needs to be balanced out as well. I don't necessarily know what the answer to that is when you're balancing out personalization versus fingerprinting, but I lean toward personalization more because I want my experiences to be catered to me versus a universal me. But anyway, I want to show you some things that you can actually do with these system colors, and it has to do with color mix. So here I have CodePen, and all I'm going to do here is I'm going to just kind of start affecting the body a little bit. And let's do this. Okay. So if I say background and I put canvas on here, right, that's not going to change anything because canvas is already white, right? So that's not going to do anything. So if I say canvas text, which is not what we want the background to be, that should be black, right? So boom, it says it's black. Right now, if I change this to dark mode, it would be reversed. But here's the thing that I think is really interesting. And actually, let me use a system color that isn't black and white. Let's use highlight. So highlight's down there. I'm going to change this to highlight. Okay. So now we're going to get this blue. There it is. So that's a highlight color, and there's a representation of what that's supposed to mean back there. But ultimately, you could use these keywords here along with the color mix function. So let's just grab that and then say color mix, and OK LCH is what I usually use. Do comma. I'm going to put in the highlight, and then we're going to say I don't know. Let's make it white by 20%. So now it's lighter, right? So now I'm actually making whatever the user brought me as highlight whiter. And I could also make it darker with black, right? So that's another thing we could do. There it is. Now it's darker. A thing that I think I've tried before, and I don't know how it's going to affect us, but we're going to give it a shot, is relative color syntax. So if you're not familiar with that, that is actually just using the one of the color functions. So in this particular case, I'm using OKLCH. And then I would use this keyword from in here and then say highlight. And then I could use the parts, the L, the C, and the H, to then render out something new. So I could do L, C, and H, and that should render out the blue. Let's see if it works. It does. Fantastic. Now I could also make the lightness a little lighter just by doing a calc, and then L, whoops, that's not an L, L plus 20. And that should make it lighter. I didn't actually type it out right here. Let's make sure I put the right thing in there. There we go. Right, so that made it lighter. That actually changed the L value of the OKLCH up, right? Made it up a little bit higher. So you could affect the lightness, the chroma, and the hue, right, in these things individually. So the really cool thing there basically says is that I can take the user's value, right, whatever's set on the user's operating system, and adjust it slightly in a direction, one way or the other, for these different things. I could either do a color mix with another color, or I can do this relative color syntax, which is using the from keyword, to then, again, adjust that color a little bit. Now, the thing that I want to kind of talk about a little bit is why is this even useful? Right? Like, okay, sure, you could make these changes and whatever. Why would you do this, right? So the answer for me about why you might want to do this, again, comes down to personalization. And again, it's something that I very much talk about in the book, where when you work with multidimensional modes, and what that means is you'll have some concept of like Home Depot, dark, critical, and expressing in Chinese, right? So something like that. So you have all these things that are affecting the final presentation of your expression. So you have these multi-dimensions that are expressing this one final expression here. Now, if you were to try to go ahead and figure out, okay, it's Home Depot, so it needs to have some sort of orange or whatever that, brand expression is. It needs to be dark, so maybe it needs to be either a darker orange or a lighter orange, or something around it needs to be dark or light. Then critical needs to show that this is an error, so maybe it can't be orange. It has to be closer to red. But hold on a second, if it's Chinese, red means good sometimes. So now I can't make it red. Maybe I need to make it another color. So there's so many different things that could affect the final result of that expression, and trying to curate every single little token underneath that one expression for a very small slice of your population seems like it's like not worth it. But if you can bucket these things into two separate entities, meaning that there's user data that represents, the feeling or the expectations of the user, and then there's effectively brand data, which is things that the brand wants. You separate those two things, and now things become a little bit easier to figure out, right? So the way that you separate these two things is you basically say, okay, well, from the user side, the user is going to have some setting that says, okay, I want dark mode, right? Because that's something that the user wants. So dark mode is something the user wants. And additionally, Chinese will also be something that the OS should know, right? Because when you set up your computer, it's going to want a language and have some information there. So dark in Chinese ends up being on one side, the user side. Then on the opposite side, what ends up happening is you're going to get the brand expressions, right? You're going to get the Home Depot and conveying that this thing is critical, right? So that we want to have a message that's conveying is something important. So now if you split it down the middle where you only have those two buckets, things end up being a little bit easier, because now you can depend on the OS potentially to be providing you the correct kind of value of color or whatever in terms of tokens from that first side, right? So you're not trying to determine if it's light or dark or whatever. The user's actually providing you what that color is supposed to be through these keywords like canvas, for example. So whatever that color is, that comes in on one side first. Then on the extra side over here, on the brand side, you can take that color and then influence it in a certain way, right? So maybe, for example, we get the canvas color, whatever that user's bringing in, and because this is Home Depot, we need to tint it closer to orange. So I'm going to go ahead and change the canvas color and tint it closer to orange. So let's even actually do that, right? Let's go over here. And so I'm going to take the canvas color, right? So we're going to take canvas. And then here, actually, I'm going to do a color mix on this one because I'm bringing in color. Color mix. And OK, LCH. Canvas. Orange. 20%. Did I spell everything right? Color mix, orange, 20%. Let me try canvas. Or is it actually orange? I can't tell. I can't tell if it's orange. In OKCLCH. Let's try to canvas text. Maybe it'll give you a little better. Can't tell if it's orange or not. Okay. That's definitely not black. That's definitely orange. Okay. Yeah, it's probably not enough orange that's being put in there. Let's actually just do like 50% orange on the canvas and make sure that it's coming in through there. There it is. Yeah, it's definitely happening. Okay. Sorry, again, I'm color deficient, not great with this stuff, and I'm sure the colors could be off in there. But ultimately, going back to what I was saying is that now the canvas part of this expression is coming from the user, right? Whatever the user is set in their OS, we're getting that encoded into a single value that I can then use in my UI. Then I'm going to go ahead and put the brand expression and all of the feedback that I need to provide as a brand with an amount of influence, which is effectively that percentage that I have at the end. And just as a rule of thumb for myself, when I do a color mix, I always put like the base color first, and then the next color is the one that I actually put the percentage in. I know that you could put percentage in both if you wanted to, but ultimately I much rather put it at the end because you could really see how the percentage is actually affecting the whole statement. So, but in this way, what I'm looking at here is that, again, the base color is the canvas that's coming in from the user, and then the orange is the thing that's coming from the brand. So orange is coming in. We're saying, okay, there's going to be some orange in here for the brand, but we also, again, remember, there's this like critical aspect, right? If I was to show this as a critical kind of color, then that's going to have some other kind of connotation. Now, again, I haven't done enough in terms of trying to figure out exactly, the best combinations of this yet. This is for, I think, other folks to really like dive into for their own purposes, to see what actually works. And on top of which, like I said, all the way in the beginning, I don't think we have really enough system colors to really help us in this kind of area, right? I think there's about only like 20 of them. And what we really need is a whole bunch more. Like one of the ones that we have right now is this thing called button face, and button face is just gray. It doesn't show that it's like primary, as an example, right? The thing that you're actually supposed to see. It's entirely possible that's supposed to be accent color, but again, we don't have enough to really support all of the concepts that I at least have in mise-en mode in there. Because again, while I do say that you could do it in effectively under 3 dozen tokens, there's less than that in there, and you kind of really need those, especially in terms of priority. So you don't really have everything there, but I really wish that we did, that we can go ahead and combine these things. But the only other thing that I'm kind of mentioning here is that we talked about how the concept of critical would be something that the brand probably might represent as like, hey, this is a message that you need to know about. It's entirely possible that that could have been a system color instead, where we're saying what the error is. I don't think there is one. Last I checked. Let's see here. I think, because I would see, probably I would recommend a red here, but there isn't one. And then let's look at deprecated. I don't think there's anything in here either. No, I don't see anything in here either in terms of talking about something that a person, again, needs to look at. They have mark, which is for like highlighting stuff, but not for like errors and stuff to really pay attention to. So something to consider there, right? Is if we were really going to go and adopt this idea of intention and expression, like I do explain in mise en mode, you would find things that would be like, all right, we know that this is Chinese, this person who's looking at our website. We know we need to express this concept of critical. How do we do that appropriately? And it's entirely possible that the concept of critical doesn't end up at the brand, right? It actually goes and ends up at the user. I think that actually makes a lot more sense, because then the concept of critical and Chinese can end up together being shipped over. And then the only thing that you really need to do on the brand side is provide the brand as a value and the brand as an influence, right? So the value being orange in Home Depot's case, and the influence being that percentage of how much we're going to provide as influence for this particular part of the UI. So, but I think there's a lot of things to explore with system color, and I think it really would help out a lot in folks that are trying to do design token curation and just try to sample some things. And again, focus more on the user experience from the personalization standpoint, right? Where a person can go ahead and choose their own colors to represent this stuff. I think about personalization even from the way that you go to like Google Shopping, right? Where everything just looks like Google, even though it's different sites, right? It's not about the way that it's being expressed there necessarily, because all we're doing is exposing that experience to the user for them to shop, right? Whether or not it looks the way that they want it to or not, that's where we're going to for the personalization aspect. And there's no branding on Google sites, Google Shopping for anybody other than Google, right? So something to consider there when you're thinking about personalization, and that's what I think about a lot. But let me know what you think about that. In the comments, of course, and of course on the Discord. Here's the Discord again for folks who are unfamiliar, right? Discord.ds.house. So I had a couple of people join recently. Thank you for joining. I really appreciate it. And definitely, get to be a part of the conversation in there, right? That would be great. Because conversation's good, learning is good. I've been posting some links in there about different things. There was a link that I posted recently about something that I kind of do want to talk about on the show, about focus trapping. I'm going to just leave it right there. I want to know your thoughts about focus trapping in the Discord. Go into Discord. Let me know about what you think there, and that would be great. But this brings me to the next part of the show, or toward the end of the part of the show, where we have the Wireframe Design Challenge. Right. So I brought up, you could go to wireframe.ds.house/challenge to play along. I see I have to make some changes here. Let's go ahead and make that up. There we go. All right. So if you want to play along, again, go to the website down there. But the first thing is make a simple logo for Nintendo. Goodness gracious. Imagine that. Imagine having the that come across your desk as a brief. Goodness gracious. What could you possibly do? I mean, Nintendo's logo is right now very timeless. I mean, the company's been around for over 100 years. I think it was like 1898 where it actually arrived on the scene doing, I think it was trading cards, I think was the first thing. So what a timeless company to try to make a simple logo for. I couldn't even imagine how to simplify it even more than what it is, because it's literally just the name in a circular box, right? Like this. What else could I possibly do with that? I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. I will let someone who thinks that they could touch that touch that instead. Let's find another one here. Okay. Make a high-tech watch for your nearest school. Ooh, that's very interesting, because that could be very controversial, because schools, right, like the regular like K through 12s, they don't like technology in their classrooms, right? Because it's distracting. And I think some of that actually is really because the teachers don't know how to harness that properly without, being distracting, right? So there's something interesting about the way that technology gets introduced in schools, but it has to be very controlled. And we still haven't exactly figured out, I don't think, the right way of doing this. But making a high tech watch is really interesting, because maybe the thing about watches is that you really can't like read content, like lots of content on a watch, right? It's only really good for small amounts of content, small little blips and blurbs of things, right? So what would be the things, this is actually a really interesting problem. What would be the things that you would expect as little blips and blurbs that might be helpful in the school day without, again, being distracting, right? Maybe for like the first couple of days. Well, first off, actually, the watch wouldn't work. Let's say the watch wouldn't work during an actual school period, right? So whatever the school period is, it wouldn't work at that particular point. In between periods, though, that's potentially when it would work, right? And I'm thinking about the first couple of days or weeks of school, it might be really helpful for people to get their bearings using the watch, right? It's almost like internal GPS. Like, where's my next class? Oh, okay, I just follow the watch and I'll get to my next class. That could be interesting. Maybe there's updates about your grades that show up on the watch in between classes. That could be interesting. Maybe there's notifications about school events that are going to be showing up in between classes. Maybe you can, maybe you could even kind of like order your lunch on the watch. That could be cool, right? So like on the way to, or maybe even before lunch that day, like you have the lunch showing up on the watch in between class or homeroom or whatever, and you can go ahead and set it up there. Or actually, yeah, I mean, attendance in homeroom, right? That part in particular, you could identify if the person is even at school that day, and then say, okay, I'm here, and then, say that you're here effectively on the watch. Are there ways of course, like gaming that system? Absolutely, right? You could be like, oh, I'm on premises and then leave. That's totally possible too. But I'm just thinking about ways that we can, potentially take some high tech stuff and make it a little bit more helpful, as opposed to being distracting. So I think there's some interesting stuff that could happen in there in the school for this stuff. But from a cost perspective, I think it probably doesn't make sense. Generally speaking, I can imagine those things just like people just breaking those things constantly. But anyway, good thought experiment. All right, one more. Okay, make a 1-inch cardboard square for a hotel in Italy. What? Make 1-inch cardboard squares. Okay, for a hotel in Italy. Whoa. Okay. So hotel in Italy, I immediately think of things that are like upscale. I haven't been to Italy to know, but I'm just thinking about like, okay, you're thinking like a Milan or a Rome and just being like very fancy, upscale kind of look. That's what I'm thinking about for like a hotel. But 1-inch cardboard squares, what would you do with 1-inch cardboard squares? Like, what are they for? Is it for like an advertising, or I don't even know what that would be for. Um, would they be like high-end cardboard squares? Because I'm thinking like checkerboard pattern or mosaics. Oh yeah, mosaic is actually interesting. Maybe you would be making a mosaic of a famous Italian painting out of cardboard. Maybe that's a look. That could be a look. That could be interesting. I would be down for that. Heck, I would even try that if I had enough cardboard and patience, or time, I should say. I have enough patience. I don't have enough time. So I think that would be really interesting, actually, is to effectively make a mosaic out of cardboard, and then, maybe it's an Italian Renaissance artist. Maybe it's a sculptor or painter or something of that nature. That could be interesting. That could be interesting. That's how I'm interpreting that, at least. But again, let me know what you think down there about, possible things there. And of course, you could try it out yourself at wireframe.ds.house/challenge and give it a shot. But anyway, I think that's going to be our show for today. So thank you so much for watching. Before you go, don't forget to smash that like and subscribe button to get notified the next time that we go live. And feel free to continue the conversation, of course, on our official Design Systems Discord by visiting discord.ds.house. Play nice in those comments, and I'll see you on the internet. Bye.